All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the inaugural What Do You Do for a Living series of podcasts. Today, joining me, we have Jason Hancock. He's actually my first guest of this podcast. I actually met Jason through my work, Math Pro Math Tutoring, and we have had a couple of collaborations already. And Jason, currently, he is a community liaison with the City of Calgary Youth Employment Center. His expertise lies in developing strong relations with the employers, different industries, staying updated on hiring trends, and of course, providing career planning support for groups of young people or even to individuals as well. Okay, I'm lucky to have him joining me today and talk a little bit more about his personal career development from start to now, and of course, a little bit of introduction to his workplace as well. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Ambrose. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I understand that you've always been involved in recruitment and employment. And of course, you have worked both in the public sector and private sector, right?
I would say half of my career has been recruiting on both sides of the fence. So I actually started as a youth program coordinator, so life skills, teaching life skills and running after school programs. And from there, because of funding and because of some restructuring within the organization, I ended up becoming an employment counselor or assistant to an employment counselor, which then started to expose me to career and employment coaching. From there, I ended up moving around to different nonprofits, trying out employment counseling. And then an individual I had met previously that works in HR thought, "You've been on the other side of the fence of employment counseling, so why don't we have you come join us for HR?" And it just made sense to start with recruitment. And from there, I started to build a career in HR, which then brought me back to the what I call the Youth Employment Center. And I'm at this point building relationships with employers, helping them with their recruitment of young people. And I'll just like to add, Ambrose, I am here on my own accord. So any viewpoints that I share here do not reflect the City of Calgary Youth Employment Center. However, I will share a little bit about the services that they provide and how young people can utilize that service.
Completely understood. And thank you for sharing that, Jason.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit about your journey when you were back at a post secondary education level? Did you have a clear view of which direction that you want to head into? Because I'm sure a lot of young people you have met over the years, they don't have a clue, or some of them have too many options, right?
Yeah.
Either way, they end up in the same place where they're in the middle of the road. There's so many roads in front of them; they don't know which one is the best to take. Were you one of those young people in the past?
Yeah, I would say actually even right up to high school, I had applied to 5 different colleges for 3 different things.
Okay.
So I started my career applying to be a pharmaceutical technician, a massage therapist, and a paramedic.
Oh wow.
Uh, this was back in Ontario. I did get accepted for the pharmaceutical technician and the massage therapy, so I pursued massage therapy for about 2 years. And in the middle of that 2 years, I just had this epiphany about my life. And in that epiphany, I just felt the best direction I could go was support people emotional or with their emotional well-being and their emotional development. Around 2008, I made the decision to apply for a school out here, which had a program that connected well with what I was looking to do. So I came out here in 2008, did a degree, ended up working for a church for a little bit as their youth program outreach worker. And as I was working in the community of Ogden in Calgary here, I started to develop a lot of relationships with the community members as well as the community association, which then just created an opportunity and a conversation for me to move into youth program coordinator running a after school program. To go back to your initial question, I really didn't know what I was thinking or where I wanted to go. I just know that I wanted to impact people in a positive way. And I think it's just as I started to move into different directions, doors just started to open, or it gave me a little bit more clarity of I like this, but I don't necessarily like this. And while going back to my story, while I was at the community association as a youth program coordinator, what had happened was funding got cut in half for the youth program, but they didn't want to lose me. So they saw that they had half funding for a career and employment assistant. And at that point, I was like, that's silly. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't align it doesn't align well with where I wanna go. Like, why would I do that? But funny enough, I just accepted it because I didn't wanna move on. I loved what I do.
Hmm.
And it became clear to me that I actually loved the career and employment side of things because it's tied to, like, practical ways to empower people. Like, when you're running an after-school program, it's hard to see the impact because emotional development can take years and years,
Very
where
true.
helping people find employment can be sometimes a quick process, but also maybe not so quick. But at least you can see that this is the finish line. They've secured sustainable employment.
You can often see the immediate impact, right? Whether it's the next day or sometimes it may take us a few months, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm sure you were able to, or you still are able to share a lot of your personal experience with the young people whom you meet, right?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, a lot of them are concerned and they're like, hey, I'm currently in this position, but it does not align with anything that I had studied before or my current career goals. But you know what? That's life, right? It happens. And often it offers a lot of other opportunities that you did not foresee at all. That's the fun part about being young and having the luxury and time to explore different things.
Exactly. And I think something to add is that we now live in a world where you have access to so many different avenues and roads. Whereas let's say when my grandparents or my parents were younger, you've got the traditional engineering, doctor, lawyer,
Mhm.
and then everything under that. But I think we live in such a unique time where whatever skills you gain in school are not for waste, even if they don't line up with where you thought you'd end up.
That is correct. Yes, personally, I graduated from University of Calgary with a biochemistry degree. That was my first degree. And yeah, I was also in the fork of the road. I'm like, okay, should I keep pursuing this or just 180 degrees turn and do something else? And I took the latter road and actually stayed behind for another 2.5 years and finished my second bachelor degree in computer science.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a little bit about myself. Yeah, for all the young people out there and all the ones that whom I've met over the years at Math Pro, don't worry, even if you don't have 100% clarity what you want to do, where you're heading, life will present itself to you at the right moments.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true, Ambrose.
Of course, throughout the last quite a few years, your job and your duties have always been surrounding, again, recruitment, life coaching, and hiring to a certain extent. And you've worked in both private, nonprofit, public sector, right?
Yes.
And of course, you've recently moved back to a youth employment center into the public sector from a private company, right?
That's correct. What I can do is go back to the youth employ or the opportunity in Ogden with the as the youth or as the youth program coordinator. So when I ended up moving over to helping with the employment side of things, I think within a year's time, I ended up moving into a nonprofit called the Mustard Seed. The Mustard Seed as an employment counselor for about a year and a half. From there, moved down to Lethbridge to manage
Wow.
a youth program or help manage a youth program. Decided that after doing some employment counseling for a while, I realized that's where I wanted to stay. So I returned back to youth employment and employment services, which then moved into HR probably within a year. Did HR at the height of COVID. I need a recruiter anymore. So let's be honest, sometimes your career path takes some hits. Sometimes it doesn't work out as you thought. And so it was quite discouraging, but I decided to take the summer off in COVID. At the end of the summer, I found another opportunity working as an employment counselor, which then set me up for success to get a job with Mount Royal University in their career
Okay.
services. And at Mount Royal, I made some connections, got to know some employers, and from there, I ended up moving over to the oil and gas industry, which I never thought would have been possible. And I became an HR coordinator, moved into an HR advisor role within a short period of time. And I think about a year and a half in, the Youth Employment Center had reached back out to me because they had a new position open up that they thought I'd be a good fit for. And it was always my goal to come back to the city, which is the timing of everything and the way it all worked out has brought me back. And now in a community liaison role, what I do is I build relationships with employers that want to hire youth.
Yes.
And sometimes that looks from the employer side, helping give them tips on how to engage young people. Sometimes it's planning hiring events that are specific, like we've done with Math Pro. Sometimes it's just simply coach or giving some resources on funding for hiring a student. And then on the
Okay.
student side of things, I help them with the resume interview preparation and all that.
Wonderful. Yeah. Again, that's an amazing journey on its own. It just a lot of twists and turns.
Yeah.
Again, just things that you never thought about or you can foresee. COVID, who could have thought about that and
Yeah.
who could have planned for that? And yeah, a lot of young people, actually, including myself, because I've never worked in the public sector. What is the biggest difference between the public and the private sector? Now, of course, I understand your roles were different,
Yeah.
but at a general level, what do you like or perhaps don't like about the private sector and how do you compare that with the public?
I think this is a great question, Ambrose, because I meet with a lot of young people that are like, I want to be in a startup, but I also want work life balance. And I'm like, well, the reality is you can't have both. So
Those are two extremes, exactly.
I think it's a matter of pros and cons based on where you're at in your life.
Mhm.
What I tell people about the public sector is the public sector, especially with where I work, it's a little bit more rigid in the sense that you have a consistent schedule Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4. But the nice thing about that is that if you're looking for a consistent paycheck, if you're looking for a pretty consistent job and role, even though in the public, you're probably going to be in a sense pigeonholed and not in a negative sense, but you're because the public sector is so big,
Mm.
their roles are more defined.
Yes.
And so what that means is that if you're just looking to come to work Monday to Friday to earn that paycheck, then I would say the public sector is a great opportunity for you. Also, within the public sector, there's opportunity to move around. It's just a little bit slower pace. So if someone is, I want work life balance, I would say the public sector is probably a good direction for folks. And if you want to get paid a pretty good wage for what you do, this public sector does pay fairly well. With the private sector, this is for the folks that have that more entrepreneurial spirit about them. They don't just want to be pigeonholed, they want to dabble in a little bit of everything. They want to not necessarily specialize yet. They want to be a generalist and then define which direction to go. That would be the private sector. Also, with the private sector, they work hard and they play hard. So the culture is a little bit different in the sense that you are at times going to put in the hours. You may, in some circumstances, have to work 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and grind it out pretty hard. But there's also the opportunity to get your hand in many different pots and try different things. Like in private sector, because I worked for a smaller company, even though I was an HR coordinator, which is the entry level, one of the entry level roles in HR, I was able to get into recruitment. I was able to get into benefits administration, labor relations a little bit, investigations a little bit. I was able to dive into multiple things, which gives me some experience so that when I want to move into a different role, I can draw from all these experiences.
So, yeah, there's no right or wrong answer. And you're a
No.
prime example for someone who can actually traverse between the two worlds and could be back and forth too. You can spend your time in private sector, gain the experience required to propel your career development to the next stage. And at a certain point in life, you're like, you know what? I think I may enjoy a little bit more of a work-life balance at this moment. And then you switch to the public sector, right? Yeah, for those who are thinking of going into one sector or the other, it's not definitive. You can actually switch around as long as you have the experience, the skill sets that the companies and maybe the city of Calgary is looking for.
Exactly.
Now, can you tell me a little bit about? I know right now you are a community or a business liaison, but prior to this role, you have also been HR specialist, right? Can you tell me a little bit about the perhaps the academic requirements to for someone who's interested in pursuing this direction and this career?
This is where it gets interesting, Ambrose, because again, it depends on where you wanna work. If you wanna work at the government level or the public sector, there is some education required. Typically, it can be a diploma
Hmm.
or depending on in some cases, they will accept what we call a human resources management certificate, and you can get that at MRU or U of C.
Okay.
And so usually that takes about a year. It's about 10 classes. So in some cases, and I might even go as far as to say most companies would look for that education.
Hmm.
However, I would say there are some companies in the private sector that maybe you don't have a diploma in business or a degree in business, but maybe you have something in psychology, or maybe you have bachelor's of education, or maybe you even have a bachelor's of marketing. There are companies that will consider you because HR, man, there's so many pieces that HR encompasses. So HR can encompass recruitment, which in a sense has some sales background.
Okay.
H HR can encompass learning and development, which is where you help a company develop some training programs for their staff that are in-house. And so there's where that Bachelor of Education comes in handy.
Uh,
There's marketing, there are pieces or companies where HR handles some of that communications piece. There are some of those psychology pieces or counseling pieces, which then you can those skills are transferable to some of those employee relations and some of those investigation pieces as well as HR in HR. So I would say the degree, the diploma, the certificate all help in every case,
mhm.
but I would say really you have to research the company to determine what is the base level that they're looking for the role that you're applying to.
Right. That's interesting because I believe I know someone who is currently in recruitment exclusively for executive levels
Okay, yeah.
of people who are interested in those kind of positions. I don't believe he had any of the academic background that you mentioned, but because he's been in the oil and gas industry for so long, he has established quite a network.
Yeah.
And he came to a point where he wanted to try something new. And somebody approached him with this job opportunity, say, "Hey, would you like to be a recruiter?" Not just for anyone, but for executives, for bigger firms, bigger companies. Even within the recruiter role itself, there's so many levels within.
And you bring up a great point, Ambrose, because I know folks that have gotten in HR with a high school diploma. Stories where someone started out as the administrative assistant, and then as they progressed and the company grew, they took on the HR responsibilities, and then it goes on and on. What I would say is that those are generally smaller companies, harder to come by.
Mm.
And like you said, the person that you know had developed a reputation already. So I would say a lot of folks that are looking for that entry level HR role, it's good to get some form of education, even if it's for yourself, because I think coming into HR from employment counseling, I thought it would be an easy.
Yeah, you would think.
No, there's a lot of things I didn't know, and had I had some of the formal education or the background, I think it would have helped me significantly with some of the learning curves that I had come into. Because obviously, there's things that you can research on your own, like employment law, understanding legislation that is local, understanding trends, recruitment processes, and all that sort of stuff. But there are some benefits to the formal education or even just following HR professionals, whether it's like podcasting or people on LinkedIn.
Okay. And so, yeah, you just mentioned about again a big piece that will help with the future success in this field, which is the academics and education.
Yeah.
And just within Calgary, there are a few universities and post-secondary institutions that do provide different types of educational program, right? So, for instance, within the Haskayne School of Business at University of Calgary, they do have a 4 years bachelor program under human resources. And you mentioned that as per your own personal experience, you received, was it a diploma at MRU?
No, I actually did their what do you call that? Continuing ed their continuing ed certificate. So I did the
I see.
human resources management certificate. You don't receive credit for it, but you basically it's self-directed learning, and it allowed me to learn some of the basics of HR. So obviously recruitment being on there, some of that employment law and employment legislation. You get into a little bit of payroll, you get into a little bit of HRIS or resources information system. So it basically exposes you to a base knowledge that would help you if you were to enter into that field without the
I
formal
see.
education. Yeah.
So yeah, that's another one that I wasn't aware of. So under continuing education, there's another opportunity, another program that is available. Mount Royal, SAIT, they all have their own programs. So I guess I'm just doing a little bit of a role playing here. If I was a student interested in going in and I'm graduating from high school, grade 12 right now, and I'm like, okay, so yes, I do want to pursue human resources, but which school, which program should I join? Do they all offer the same opportunities when I graduate from it? Like, is the end point, or do all these programs lead to the same end points? If so, it's obvious choice for me to pick the cheapest one and the fastest route to that destination, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, great question. I'm trying to think. I think a lot of schools will have open houses probably in the next month here as they've just opened up their doors for the new school year. I think they have open houses now or maybe just before they start their fall semester. I don't recall off the top of my head, but open houses for me, I actually just went and met with some academic or not academic advisors. Yeah, I think I went to the academic advisor, if I remember correctly, and I just had a conversation with them. I talked to them about my goals, and they painted me different pictures based on where I am at financially or even timeline-wise, and they talked to me a little bit about the different courses that are available
Yeah.
at the school. So that's one way. You can always do research online about schooling because there are some maybe more private schools in Calgary that offer an HR diploma, but then you have to ask yourself the question, what are they covering in those courses? And is it enough that an employer is going to look at that as suitable education?
Right.
A- Again, each employer is unique. You've got some of these employers that are well recognized that only draw from certain schools like U of C because U of C's reputation for engineering. But then you've got companies that maybe are smaller or maybe don't maybe uphold where you went to school as high.
Hmm.
And so really it is that research piece. And then, yeah, I think another really useful tool or another really useful site is the CPHR site, which is I th- we're moving towards Alberta being a place where HR folk are represented by the CPHR, like the accountant folk are represented by the CPA.
Got it.
And so the CPHR will give you a good understanding of the pathway if you ever want to get to your CPHR. And they have three different pathways, which I won't get into detail because I don't know them offhand. But it will show you the pathway with the education. It will show you the pathway with maybe some experience and some education, and then it will show you the pathway with just experience alone, I believe. And that is another good tool. The last tool I'll share about is that Queen's University is just a fantastic university when it comes to their post-secondary career development. They have actual maps.
Hmm.
I think they've created, if I recall correctly, they've created those maps for folks that are looking at building a career in HR.
Okay. And of course, the YUC provides all those services as well,
Yeah.
right? For those people, for those young people who would like to have more of a interactive, one-on-one, face-to-face experience rather than just reading web pages upon web pages.
Yeah.
I know it's tiring, but you know what? Again, that's life. That's another part of work and time that a lot of high schoolers, especially the grade 12s and the grade 11s, they have to put aside to figure out, yeah, first of all the post secondary education applications and of course, all the career development they need to research on. But yeah, which again, why EC provides a lot of those services, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But before that, I would like to chat about your experience as a recruiter, right? Of course, for it doesn't matter which industry, which company, and what positions the company is recruiting for. Often, when you post something out on Indeed or any other job sites, you will be receiving hundreds upon hundreds of applications fighting for two open spots. As a recruiter, what are you looking for when you are looking for that perfect candidate?
I'm going to wear both the employment counselor and the recruiter
I know
hat.
I'm not making it easy for you because you have such an extensive background and experience, and all these questions I'm asking, I'm sure a lot of young people have these same questions. So,
Totally. And again, I'm a bit of a junior recruiter, so there's a lot of excellent resources out there. So what I'm going to share, if any of it seems like it doesn't align with some more senior, I would go with the senior folk. But what I will say is, I think first and foremost, does your resume speak to the qualifications? I think there have been a number of concerns with employers in the last little while that they're having trouble finding the skill that they're looking for. And so they'll get a lot of applications, but a lot of those applications, those folks don't match the skill sets that they're looking for. And my question would become, is it that the person doesn't have the skills, or is it that they're just not communicating those skills very well on their resume? And so on the resume, what we're looking for are those qualifications. And I would say if you can match 70% of those key qualifications, I think it's worthwhile applying. Some people think I don't have these 2 bullet points of the 9, and I'm like, just give it a shot because some of those things can be taught, you know what I mean? Some of those skills can be taught. So I think the qualifications are key. And then I think speaking to your experience in the resume. So if you're saying you have, let's say, 5 years experience as a recruiter, and then I go down to your work history and I can't count 5 years because either the dates aren't there or you haven't included all the information, then to me that's a red flag. You're not being completely honest.
the hiring managers at Math Pro, so I can attest to that. And Jason, you can be honest with me, and I'll be honest with you. How much time do you spend on looking at a resume or in an application? We got the cover letter, we got the resume. On average, how much
30
time do you spend on one?
30 seconds maybe. I think it's dropped to 10 or
Yeah, I
15 now.
know. I know. Yeah.
And I think because I always tell people if you're laying out your resume, lay it out with those qualifications at the top because that's where I'm starting. And if I don't necessarily see those qualifications at the top, then the likelihood of me reading down further to figure it out, slim to none.
Hmm. With that said, you also want to make it concise, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to read a whole essay, single line, font eight, none of that, right? You have to have enough real estate on that piece of paper, and white spaces. That's important as well, like the layout of the resume,
Yep.
right? For the first 2 seconds, if I get tired looking at your resume, I'll probably or feeling exhausted already after the first 2 seconds, I would probably leave it and jump to the next, right?
And I wanna say this because I think it's worth stressing it. Read the job description to understand it. And if you're finding, because some companies post the most exhaustive job descriptions. So this is where I cheat the system a little bit and I use ChatGPT.
Mhm.
You know, I'm like, "ChatGPT, can you help me define the key skills that they're looking for from this job description?" And it'll help you pick out those key skills. And what I would say is in your application, your cover letter, and your resume, speak to those things. Sometimes people are adding information that's not relevant, it's not helpful. So make it relevant. Tell me the story of why, as a recruiter, I want to know how you're going to meet the need that I have in front of me. And obviously, the way you communicate that as an executive versus the way you communicate that as someone looking for their first career opportunity is a little bit different. So are the qualifications. So if you can speak to the qualifications and target your resume to what the employer needs and speak to that, you're going to stand out from the crowd.
Mhm. Aside from the resume, the application itself, what are other things that an applicant can do to increase their chance of getting hired?
That's a great question. The first one that I wanna talk about in networking, I think that a lot of youth, that we meet at the Youth Employment Center, all that they've been doing is applying online and
Mhm.
applying online. And I would go as far as to say that 80% of the positions that are filled are usually filled with people that know somebody
Yes.
that filled that position. And so you're battling up against people that already have a relationship. What I encourage young people to do is look out for those networking opportunities. If you're looking to get a career in IT, maybe you're not currently attending post secondary, you could go down to Platform Calgary. Platform Calgary is where all the IT startups have their start. And it's where they do these really cool events once a week or once a month. And it's just a good way to brush shoulders with folks that are in the IT industry. Some of them are the influencers, others are just like you that are looking for that first job. If you're in post secondary, there's a lot of cool networking events within the career services. I worked at MRU and we did some great networking events. If you're maybe a little bit introvert, like I am, sometimes it's just learning to have conversations with people you already know. So let's say I wanted a job at Co-op, Calgary Co-op, and maybe I don't have a job there, but I know my friend does. I could have a conversation with my friend and ask, "Hey, would you ever mind connecting me with your manager? I'm interested in getting a job there." And what I say is if you land that conversation, make it concise. Tell the employer that you want 15, 20 minutes of their time.
Mhm.
And usually you'll be surprised that a lot of those folks will create 30 minutes to an hour, but because you said 15 minutes, it gives them an easy out if it doesn't work out.
That's a good
Thi
tip. Yeah.
and this is something we work with our youth
Mhm.
on is, also creating a list of questions that, are suitable. Don't A lot of people wanna ask, what does the job look like?" Don't ask that, it's outlined in the job description.
I know. Yeah. You have to show me that you've done your homework, right?
Ask about projects, ask about growth, ask the other person on the other side how they ended up here. If you want a list of questions, go online, ask for informational interview questions. And so I'd say networking is a big piece. I would say if you're doing an online application, don't leave any space blank.
Mhm.
It's unfortunate that some employers make the application process exhaustive, and I can speak to both sides, but the reality is,
And I'm
I've
guilty
heard
of that. Sorry. Yeah.
so am I but I would say don't leave any space blank. If you
Right.
don't have something, just say "in progress," or you can say something to the effects of "willing to learn." And so networking, fill out the full application, do your research on the company. Don't just apply just for any company. Really figure out
Right.
what it is that you're looking for in that time.
Yes. And I can share a little bit of my personal experience as well. For the past few weeks, we've actually set up booths at University of Calgary and also Mount Royal University for recruitment, just to promote Math Pro as a company and that we are hiring. One thing that I would suggest young people not to do is walk up to a potential employer or company representative, and the first thing that you ask is, "So how much do you guys pay?" Yeah,
Hi.
yep. Yeah, you'll be surprised. I was talking to university students, and I've met quite a few young people, and yeah, before they know anything about our company and, the position that we're hiring for, they just say, "Yeah, what do you pay?" Yeah, that's a big no. Yeah. If you proceed putting in your application, I will actually go all the way, find your application, and delete it.
I It's funny you bring that up because I was just talking to an employer yesterday and they were saying they've attended our annual hiring fair. So we do an annual hiring fair once a year for the youth of Calgary. And there was this one company and they said they see some funny situations. So some youth will walk up and they'll be so distracted
Oh, yeah.
and just they'll hand you their resume and they'll just be wandering with their eyes, not
Yep.
really paying attention. Don't do that. If you're interested in a company, give them your full attention
Eye contact. Yep.
and come with questions, right? Like, how impressed are you when people come with questions as opposed to saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a job?"
Mhm. Exactly. So, yeah, these are the soft skills that you can develop and impress a potential employer. So, yes, there's a lot that goes into it when you apply for a dream job: the resume, the research, networking, your body language, the tone of voice, your level of energy and enthusiasm when you actually get to meet with a company representative. All that matters. All that matters. Yeah. It's
Eh,
not easy.
s-
No, but it's a learning process. It's a journey. So, speaking of dream job, do you believe in it, Jason? Because a lot of Gen Zers, perhaps, they say, "Oh, I want to follow my dream." So when they're high school and when they're in post secondary, they're like, "I want to follow my dream." It's not necessarily what job brings me the most money. I just want to follow my dream. Do you believe in that?
Oh, that's a tough question, Ambrose, because
I know, Jason.
I I'm on the fence. I'm a both ands kind of guy, to be honest.
Okay. And that's fine. Me too. I am too.
I would say that you can't bank on it, but it is possible.
Mhm.
I think we all have our dream job, and I think it's worth going after. But I also think sometimes reality kicks in. I'll remember talking to some of my friends who now have families and kids. They don't have the freedom to chase their dream job because they have a family to take care of, because they
Correct.
have bills to take care of.
Mhm.
And I are going to chase your dream job, be a little flexible around it. So what I would say is I'll use myself for example.
Yes.
I really actually do a little bit I have some involvement in some real estate outside of my regular 9 to 5. And as I started to explore it, I realized, "Oh, man, it'd be cool to get into real estate in an HR role." Now, those companies are hard to break into.
Yep.
So, while I'm waiting and while I'm applying to job opportunities, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to research the companies that maybe I would be interested in getting involved with. And maybe in all the while I'm researching those companies, I'm using my LinkedIn to leverage to start to build some connections within that company. Or for some people, maybe it's not a specific company, it's a specific role. Start to have conversations or start to reach out to people that are doing what you've done
Mhm.
and start there, have some of those conversations, really determine if it is for you because some people I think let's use startup culture. I think a lot of people think startup culture is sexy, let's be honest. They think startup cultures there's that excitement, there's that rush, but what I
Mhm.
think a lot of people fail to see and maybe you could speak this better than I can with Math Pro is that startup culture is a grind. There's risk. There's times where I'm sure that I've seen it with some people where they don't know if they're gonna make it, and they just gotta keep showing up when it's hard, and that's not as attractive for somebody that maybe just likes the finished product. And so I think what's important when you're going after your dream job, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, Ambrose, as well, because you've been involved in so much. But I think what's important is research what it will take, get to know some people that are doing it and have those conversations, ask them all the questions, get a good rounded point of view that is this something that is sustainable for you? Is this something that you can do here and now? Is there a way to start doing it now? Or is it something that you've decided maybe actually isn't the best fit for you?
Yes, I would like to add to that. Yes, I think our positions are very similar, Jason. That yes, in the back of my mind, yes, there are dream jobs or passions that I want to pursue, but at the same time, at this age of my life and this stage, I'm not in a position to fully dive in and say, okay, I'm going to leave everything behind and
Yeah.
pursue this. I'm a little, yeah, it's a little bit too late for that. And for that reason, when I get to meet with young people, whether it's students who come through Math Pro or my staff, I would tell them, hey, you are 20 years old, go for it. If there's something that you really want to try and passionate about, go for it. You're still young, but give yourself a timeline, a deadline. Say, yes, I'm
That's
going
good.
to try it for 2 years. If I can't get to where I want to be, I need to have contingency plans
Yeah.
because around that time, real life might actually starts kicking in. And yes, you have bills to pay. You may have other commitments, relationships, and all those cost money. Yeah, so that's a reality, right? Yeah, that's what I often recommend to people. Yeah, if you're young, less commitments or no commitments, go for it, but give yourself 1 to 2 years,
That's
right?
good. I really like that. I can remember being, I think, young. I was working in the church at 24, and I think I hit this wall where I burnt out a little bit because it was an extreme job. My dream job, mind you,
Mhm.
it was my dream job, but it came with lots of challenges that I did not encounter. And I remember I was nervous to have a conversation with my boss because I was like, where do I go from here? And the best advice I received from him was, you're in your 20s, try everything that you can right now. And by your 30s, you start to, I guess, you start to narrow it down. You start to get more specialized and you start to determine your direction. And I would say it was some of the best advice I'd ever received. And yeah, so I echo what you're saying, is what I'm saying.
And that's what I want to help bring to light as well with these interviews, with these podcasts, with people in different industries, professions, because there's always good and bads about each position,
Yeah.
right? So you mentioned that, yeah, you actually landed your dream job, but a little did you know that, yeah, there's the other side of it.
Yeah.
And you didn't know until you're knee deep, right?
And sometimes you can't, education can only prepare you so far, and then you jump into real life and you're like, "My manual doesn't tell me how to deal with this
No.
situation."
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why it's so important for young people to just try things out, be inquisitive, and just be adventurous as well. If there's an opportunity that opens up in front of you, do some risk management and yeah, try it. And if it doesn't work out, pivot and try other things. Yeah, it's been going well for you. It's been going for me as well. So I think that is a universal advice from me to a lot of young people out there. Yeah, Jason, let's actually pivot a little bit and more about YEC, okay,
Sounds good.
Youth Employment Center. Now, I actually have been advocating and promoting on behalf of YEC when I meet with families, young people,
Yeah,
and a lot of them, even for the parents, they didn't know about your
yeah,
existence. They didn't know the type of services that you guys provide. Let's say if I'm a teenager in grade 11,
mhm,
right? And I am considering my options. Okay, what should I do next? Which school should I go? What career should I go pursue? Where do I start? So I heard about YUC from Ambrose, right? Where do I start?
I think it's honestly, the Youth Employment Center is such an easy process. So we are a drop-in service for youth ages 15 to 24. So what we always tell folks that have heard about the YEC is that they can just drop in anytime, Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 5 p.m. We are open later on Wednesdays as well. So we're open till 6 p.m. on Wednesdays during the school year, just to make room for the folks that can't get down here any sooner. And what they'll do is they'll meet with an employment counselor. That initial meeting will be about 45 minutes. The employment counselor will talk to them about their employment goals, look over their resume, maybe even look over their cover letter and discuss a job search strategy. Usually within that first meeting, it's determined whether or not someone's looking for an immediate job or a career direction. So off of what you're saying is, there are folks that come in and they're like, I'm currently working, or I'm just finishing school and I really don't know where to go. So we actually have, I think, one or two or three folks on staff that are career specialists. And what I mean by career specialist is they actually have training and schooling and education around career development, because it's a little bit different doing employment counseling than it is career development. Career development gets into a lot more assessment work, gets into a lot more counseling. And so what will happen is that another meeting will be scheduled between the individual as well as that counselor, and they'll go through a few different assessments, which then they leave with the youth to do some homework. And in those assessments, they're looking at the skill sets, they're looking at someone's values, they're looking at someone's maybe current aspirations, because I think some people forget that you might have an aspiration today, but it will change tomorrow. More or less, we don't really tell them which direction to go. We just help them unravel and unpackage some of their skill sets, and then we talk to them about their options and which direction they can go. And sometimes those options might mean that there's specific schools that offer those programs, in which case then we maybe recommend that they go speak with an academic advisor at those schools. In some cases, maybe it's that they want to be an entrepreneur and they want to start a business. So then we'll refer them to companies like Momentum who can help with business startups. And so we just meet with them, we go through that process, and then we discuss the options and point them in the right direction or right resource.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it sounds very encompassing, the from the minutes that a person do a walk in and being introduced to a career, what do you call it? Career developer or career specialist, development specialist or counselor?
Yeah, I think we call them careers. I think the proper term would be a career counselor. Yeah.
Career counselor.
Yeah.
And building a profile, do some assessments, a lot of Q&A, and possibly referral to specific fields or institution that can help with, I guess, the search further. Yeah.
And I might want to add, because I forgot to add it as well, is we also have connections to professionals within each industry. So
Oh, great.
maybe the individual still at that point hasn't got enough information or hasn't received enough information to make a decision, in which case then we would introduce them to a professional and they would schedule a 15, 20-minute, 30-minute informational interview, in which case they would ask them questions to gather further information.
Okay, that's great. And again, these are valuable services that and free.
Yeah.
That are,
Free
that,
for all Calgarians between the ages of 15 and 24.
oh, there you go. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the key word right there. It is free, and I have met, of course, Jason in person and your whole team as well when I was down there a few weeks ago. Wonderful people, a lot of positive energy, and a lot of experience as well. So I encourage all. Is it 15 to 24? You said.
Yeah, as long as they can
Yeah.
work in Canada.
Yep, exactly. If you meet all those criteria, use YUC. Go down there, pay a visit. If you don't even want to do anything yet during that first visit, just check it out, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, in addition to career development, I am aware that YUC also provides other services such as helping out with resume writing, proofreading the cover letter, and perhaps teaching job searching strategies to young people. And as you mentioned, networking opportunities and also
Yeah,
interview preparation too.
yeah. And then the other thing that I'll mention is the annual hiring fair. It's funny, I think a lot of people know about the hiring event that happens in the spring at the BMO, but I don't think they know it's tied to us.
Yeah, no, they
You
had
know?
no clue.
So we the Youth Employment Center, the City of Calgary Youth Employment Center is the one that plans the event. And generally speaking, we see 6,000 youth come through the doors. We have about 80 employers. And the unique thing about this fair is that each employer that is in attendance has to be committed to hiring at least 10 people in that season. This is not a career fair. It's not a place where you just talk to people about their company. These employers that are committed to this event are actually hiring. And so that's the difference between our fair and maybe a few others that job seekers have maybe attended in the past.
And I've attended quite a few times of this
Yeah.
annual fair. It's very organized, very streamlined. Everything it's handled professionally from the people who are lining up coming in to all the support that's given to the hiring companies. Yeah, top notch. I encourage a lot of young people to again just to go down to the BMO Center. I believe it's the second week of April. Yeah, every year. Or it may change from year to
Yeah.
year, but it's springtime, it's April. It may snow, it may shine, but still great opportunities for you to actually meet with these hiring companies face to face with the company representatives and learn more about their industries. Yeah, before we wrap up this chat here, Jason, of course, I would like to be able to expand this and be able to chat with more professionals in different industries. Now, do you have anyone that you can nominate? Perhaps I can reach out to and have another 60 minutes chat with them.
I think my colleague, I think you had met her, Desiree.
Yes.
She's got a background in HR, but is moving towards communications and marketing. She would be an awesome voice to hear. She's done such a great job on the Youth Employment Center marketing. So if any of your folks are following us on social media, that's because my colleague Des has done such a great job.
Oh, she's been on a roll every day. There's there's social posts
Yeah.
coming up from YEC. So that is all Desiree's wonderful work. So that's amazing. So thank you so much for your time, Jason. I've learned a lot about you personally, and of course, the current role that you hold at YEC and the different services that it provides to young people. And yeah, thank you again. And yeah, this wraps up our first podcast of the What Do You Do for a Living series. Thank you so
Thanks
much,
so much.
Jason.
Yeah. You too.
Okay.
Bye.